So kind of going off of that, what other challenges did you face leading at a high level in the Navy?
I mean, what happens is as you start self-reflecting, because I would say the first 10 years, I was just getting my job done, right? There was so much required of me technically, so many milestones to meet as a junior person might moving up in any career field that they have to get qualified in one technical area or another. Um, but what happens is when you pause sometimes, and when I paused at this 10-year point, 12-year point in my career, um, I sort of looked around and was like, wait a minute, can I do this? And I know the phrase that you hear a lot is imposter syndrome.
Yes. Mhm.
Or you hear that like, I'm not good enough. Um, but I would say, there's this Garfield cartoon that my mother shared with me. It's actually in one of her books. So my mom is the author of a book called Writing on Both Sides of the Brain, and she talks about how to quiet the critic or the left side of your brain when you're creative, when you're being creative and thinking creatively. And there's a scene where Garfield is tap dancing. He's standing on his legs. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I can tap dance. I can stand on my legs, and I can reach tabletops." I didn't. And then John walks in, and John's like his owner, and he's like, "Garfield, cats can't walk on their hind legs. What are you doing?" And he like flop falls over. So there's sometimes where I'm like, "What am I doing? I can't do this." And then I flop, I fall over. Like I'm like, well,
Yeah.
there's times where I'm just doing it,
Mhm.
whatever it is that needs to be done, and someone looks at me like, "What are you doing here?" Like I literally get that look. Like, "What are you doing here?" My hair's too long. My laugh's too loud. My smile's too big. I don't look like a guy in uniform. I've got curvy hips and
Yeah.
the belt doesn't fit quite right. And, I mean, I didn't tie my shoes enough and I was trying to get the kids out the door and so, I get this sort of like, look, it's like, you don't belong here. And then I fall and I do, and I fall and then I give them reason to think that,
Yeah.
because I start to behave poorly and I start to, it doesn't cycle well. And so that I would say only gets worse when you ask me what my challenges are. I think my worst points in my career has been when we've then put out like anonymous surveys, and you ask
Mhm.
for anonymous feedback. And I take that so personally. I always have to get a good friend, a good coach to help me through it, another peer on
Mhm.
the ship with me. I've had some really amazing peers and friends like throughout my whole career that will like read those comments with me and kind of go
Mhm.
through them and give me some context because nobody's trained in how to write good feedback.
Right.
Um, we really aren't, and we're not really trained on how to receive it, how to
Mhm.
contextualize it. And so that has always been, I feel like at the end of a whipping lash, whenever I receive anonymous feedback. Because all the good stuff I'll just ignore and I just go right to the one negative comment, like, wait, did
Everyone
I
does.
right? And so yeah, have a hard that's probably some of the biggest challenges I would say is the negative anonymous feedback.
Mhm.